G'day humanoid life forms, it's Chewy here. Today I want to talk about something a little bit sad. Just been riding around for an hour or so, just like this, just chilling out, just taking it easy. A few days ago, my family lost its matriarch, my grandmother, my Oma. She passed away at the ripe old age of 100 years old. Now I'm okay, but obviously I'm still a little bit sad, and you know, it'll take a little bit of time to adjust to the idea that, you know, my grandmother's no longer with us. It's my mum's mum, absolutely brilliant lady. I want to tell you something inspirational about her though, an amazing story of, you know, wit. My grandmother grew up in Holland, in the Netherlands. She was newly married when World War II broke out. The Germans came and took everything. And I mean everything, even their coal. They took whatever was of a value to them, because it was war and they were invading. They even tried to take her. And my grandmother was in town one day, I'm not sure exactly what for, I can't remember that part of the story. But the German soldiers started lining people up and marching them to the train. We all know what happened with the trains, people didn't come back. So she was being marched to the trains. She knew the town very well. She made her way to the back, and the soldiers there were sort of pointing the bayonets towards them to keep marching. And she knew there was a little side alleyway coming up. She pretended to tie up a shoelace and then ducked down the alley and ran. Now while all this was going on, one of the neighbours saw and ran to my grandfather and said, "They've taken Mary." And being very much in love, my grandfather went into the kitchen and grabbed the biggest carving knife that he had and was going to go and save her. This is one of those little Dutch villages, cobblestone roads and closed in spaces, alleyways, very narrow walking roads. And so as my grandmother was running through the way back home, my grandfather was running to save her. And it just so happened that they ran down the same alleyway. Could you imagine if they never met then in that alleyway? I could well be not here. Could you imagine if my grandmother didn't have the tenacity, nous and wit to do what she did to get away from the line up to the train? I wouldn't be here. Absolutely amazing woman. When my grandmother and grandfather left Holland, they had 7 children from the age of 1 to 11. My mother was 9 years old, second eldest. And they gave all of their possessions, clothes, blankets, boots, anything of warmth to their family and neighbours, because they thought, we're going to this tropical paradise called Australia, which is all they knew of Australia was from a letter from my grandmother's sister saying, "Come to Australia, it's beautiful and warm." Now it was a 6-week journey on the boat. They didn't know a word of English. When they got here, it was the middle of winter. And we all know what winter in Sydney can be like. They lived in a hostel for a little while, and then they found their way up at a little place called Dunbogan, which is across the river from Laurelton and North Haven in the Camden Haven district, about 30 minutes south of Port Macquarie. My mum's first bed was a Hessian potato sack filled with seaweed. They really didn't have anything. They built up their family, 7 kids grew up. She was still relatively young and decided to adopt another child. The department said, look, we haven't got a baby for you, but we've got a 4-year-old girl, can you look after her? And my grandmother, being my grandmother, said, yeah, okay. Then only, I think months later, they called her again and said, look, we still don't have a baby, but we've got this other 4-year-old girl who needs a home. And my grandmother, being my grandmother, said, yeah, okay. Then I think it might have been a year or two later, they rang her up and said, all right, we've got a little baby for you. I'm not sure, about a 1-year-old. And my grandmother's like, oh, okay, I'll take her. So I adopted 3 more children and raised them as her own. My beautiful aunties. Actually, I don't think I can get through that way. Yeah, you're right, mate. I'm not going to tell you a whole life story because there's so much to tell. Anyway, just to put this into context, how big my family is. I've got 45 first cousins on that side of the family, and between the 45 of us, my grandmother has over 100 great-grandchildren. I don't even know how many. My daughter, who's now 18, was number 67, and my son, who was born 1.5 years later, was great-grandchild number 76. I'm not sure how many great-great-grandchildren we got up to, but there are a dozen or so, maybe a little bit more, I'm not sure. So I'm heading up to the funeral this week, and I'm sure it'll be a little bit sad, but it will also be a very joyous occasion celebrating the life of an absolutely magnificent woman, my Oma, Mary Opdam. God bless and keep you, Oma. You will be missed by many. We love you dearly. Oh, that's about all. Until next time, be good to each other. Cheerio out. Peace.